corporation has brought freedom and empowerment to the urban local governments, or whether they are expressions, whether these expressions are mere rhetorical. Dr. Roy Bahl's observation that while the urban local government have only limited taxing power, they often underuse the taxing power that they do have. Nothing can be more true in the Indian context than what you have said, sir. Having worked in the municipal corporation for nearly 6 years, I can definitely say one thing, that it's a myth to believe that the municipal corporations, especially the large municipal corporations in India, are not provided with sufficient tax handles and user charges that they can manage their affairs. If they are inefficiently managed, then it means that both tax administration and city councils have meekly surrendered to populistic agenda. We are rich cities, but poorly managed. We have the rich city and poorly managed syndrome. It's not uncommon to hear that property tax revaluation has been done once in 10 years or even 20 years in some municipalities, though the law mandates periodic revisions. Let me take the example of the Bangalore City Corporation, which follows the area-based assessment. The statute demands that the revaluation shall be done once every 3 years. It empowers the local council to enhance the revaluation up to 30%, depending upon the index that they would like to choose at the time of revaluation. Further, the statute states that in an event if the council does not pass the revaluation at the time it has to be passed, there will be an automatic revaluation by 15% over the previous year. Now, this ab initio revaluation by 15%, though may not make academic sense, it was deliberately mandated by the state legislation only to set free the tax administration from any populistic agenda which would prevent the periodic revision. Despite this express statutory provisions, the City Council passed an unanimous decision not to exercise their powers of revision. Not only this, they also put pressure on the government to insist that the tax administration should not revise the mandatory 15% enhancement. This situation was repeated again in the year 2014-15, precisely the election year. In short, the revaluation did not happen for 2 terms, and the resultant loss per year is about 200 crores, enough funds to pave the city of Bangalore every year. As Roy pointed out, Hoya Martin identifies 2 systemic weaknesses related to the failure of local government. One, that the limited tax revenue raising powers and the bad design of the local taxes that has been assigned to them. In India, the property tax design based on the annual rental value is badly flawed. However, urban local governments across the country have addressed this malaise significantly through a pragmatic process by introducing the area-based assessment. This method of valuation of the area-based assessment may not qualify one of the best international practice. However, has given a pragmatic solution to the outdated valuation rules. Besides, this area-based assessment has not only been pragmatic, but it has earned the acceptance of the taxpayer and hence the compliance. The only dependent factor for the tax buoyancy is the valuation that should be done once every 3 years. Bangalore civic improvements are taking place and the property valuations are going up, which means that the properties at the lower value zones will shift to the higher value zones, and therefore the area-based assessment could be as buoyant a tax as assessed in the capital value. There are simple interventions to the increase of property tax revenues as detailed in the chapter by McCluskey and Frank Sen, who have advocated the use of GIS for mapping the properties and computerized bookkeeping to address the coverage issue. Bangalore has completed this process of GIS mapping, and over 95% of the properties are in the GIS list. And with this technological advancement, the revenue from mere 10 million in the year 2000 is today 140 million and has got the capacity of raising up to 300 million in the next 3 years. The 13th Finance Commission has mandated that the state government shall constitute a property tax board to assist the urban local bodies to put in place an independent and transparent procedures for assessment of property, develop a database, review property tax system, and suggest suitable base for valuation of properties. Despite this being made a precondition for the release of performance grant to the local bodies, most states are yet to constitute this committee. Rajasthan and Haryana, until recently, had abolished the property tax even without consulting the local urban government, and nor did they give any alternative handles. Punjab puts the threshold of property tax so high that almost 2/3 of the property are exempted. Since the property tax is the only important tax to the municipal government, when state government abolishes or severely restricts this tax, it is deliberately de-empowering its municipalities. Paul Smoke and Hoye Martinez have discussed the opportunity of generating revenue from user charges in the respective chapters. Though it is logical for the urban local bodies to recover the cost of specific services provided, most urban bodies do not have enabling provisions, and those who have are not implementing the same. In Bangalore, the Municipal Act was amended in the year 2002, enabling them to collect the solid waste management cess and the infrastructure cess. It was, however, only in the year 2010 that the corporation operationalized the solid waste management cess, but not the infrastructure cess. It's an easy estimate that the corporation is foregoing over 100 crores by not insisting on the infrastructure cess. The corporation is also not collecting the parking charges, and the estimated loss is about 20 crores. In respect of advertisement tax, they receive advertisement tax from about 400 billboards, and over 4,000 billboards are unauthorized. The estimated loss from this is about 50 crores. From the very ordinary back-of-the-envelope calculation, the Bangalore City Corporation is losing about 500 crores annually by underusing their powers to raise independent revenue. In fact, with the GIS being available, one can accurately assess the loss of revenue in each of these sources, perhaps an opportunity for researchers to do research in Bangalore. There's also a discussion in the book about property transfer tax, but in India, this function is assigned to the state government. However, municipalities also piggy-ride the Department of Stamps and Registration to collect a percentage as their transfer fee, as was done in Karnataka, where the Stamps and Registration Department collected 2% of the property valuation as transfer fee and remitted to the respective municipalities. However, by an interpretation of the Stamps and Registration Department, the transfer fee of 2% was subsequently calculated on the tax and not on the valuation. This change in the incident reduced the revenue base drastically and made it insignificant. Currently, the transfer fee is not collected, and this source is completely dried up. Borrowing is appropriate for major infrastructure projects because it permits municipalities to synchronize their costs and benefits of infrastructure over time. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation was the first municipality in the country to issue municipal bond, and many others follow suit by escrowing their revenues for repayment. The main disadvantage of that is that it can constrain local fiscal flexibility, as potential revenues are dedicated to debt repayment and thus not available for other users. After me, the deluge. I mean, that's what the corporation always says. Whatever money is there, spend it now. And what you do later is your funeral. Under the non-property tax to meet the financial needs, the Metropolitan government has adopted, the Metropolitan government has the option to add surcharge on the state revenues, stream like tax on sales tax, income tax, or motor vehicle tax may be difficult to piggy-ride, as the state government may not be willing to add further stress to their existing tax rate. State government may be prepared for transfers rather than this piggy ride. However, under the proposed Metropolitan Planning Commission, which is the planning body for the multi-municipal metropolitan region, plans rather than depend upon unpredictable transfers from central government, they could use new sources of revenues. The Karnataka State Cabinet has approved a policy for land monetization in the metropolitan region through levy of the following cesses: increase FSI along the metro rail corridor, and the levy of one-time development cess to cover the property-related capital costs associated with new development and new development. The funds received from these instruments are pooled in the Metropolitan Infrastructure Fund and is shared between the infrastructure agencies and the other civic providers. Though the Cabinet has passed this land monetization policy 2 years ago, the notification is yet to be used. As could be seen, the local government in India have sufficient revenue streams to manage their affairs to enjoy both freedom and empowerment, but until such time they exercise the authority, these expressions remain rhetorical and continue to function as a functioning anarchy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. Clearly, you've read the book in great detail. And thank you for associating some of those themes or some of the ideas in the book with the practical situation in India at the ground level. May I request Mr. Satya Poddar, Senior Partner, Ernst & Young, to make his remarks? About 10 to 12 minutes.
I have learned a lot for the past 3-4 hours, and these are issues on which I think the best way to describe my mental state is confusing, and I'm totally confused. But at the same time, they have aroused my curiosity to do more research and more thinking about how to deal with the problems that have been identified today. And I'll share some of the discussions that have taken place in the recent past in India in the context of GST, and metropolitan finance or municipal finance has been a very crucial issue in those discussions. And that will be one way of illustrating the political and technical dimensions in dealing with the issues that we're talking about today. The key issue is, according to, I think that if you look at the paper on empowering decentralization, can you have decentralization of expenditure functions and governance without decentralization of taxation powers? That's the key issue. And I think all of the several discussants have commented on difficulties in empowering the local or the regional or the metropolitan governments with the taxation powers. Either they have adequate powers which are not exercised, or maybe they don't have the adequate powers. And I leave it to you to decide whether you can have decentralization of expenditure and functional responsibilities without decentralization of taxation. And essentially, if you cannot decentralize taxation powers and the levy of taxation, it necessarily means that those functions which are decentralized have to be funded by grants or subsidies of some type. And I leave it to Roy and Johannes to decide whether that concept of decentralization is economically efficient. Because you identified 3 important objectives of decentralization: accountability, economies of scale, internalizing economies of scale in some case, which can go positive or negative, and also transparency, technical efficiency. So the question is that if you are not decentralizing the taxation powers, can you have accountability? Because accountability necessarily means that in order to raise funds for a given function, you can talk to the people who are going to contribute to those funds. And that's what accountability means. And if you cannot raise taxes, or if you don't have the power to raise taxes, then the goal of accountability is not achieved by simply decentralizing functions. So that's a question. I presume that even the home rule requires that those who want services will pay for them.